what the heck is a personal curriculum? Basically, it's something you want to learn on your own and you set up the curriculum for yourself. I've been seeing personal curriculums pop up all over my Instagram feed. They're on Threads, they're on TikTok, they're everywhere. And I wanted to explore what that meant. So every time I looked it up, people are giving these generic answers of what it is. And I hated them. I hated every single explanation because it didn't really tell me how to do it. So I'm going to share with you my personal curriculum, what I decided to study, and how I put it together. So I decided that I was going to study history. That is not initially what I decided I was going to study. At first, I thought I was going to study more about plants. I was like interior design, maybe cooking, something like that. As I started pulling out the books for it, I got bored to death. And instead, I decided I'm going to look at a documentary, not with the purpose of that being my personal curriculum. So I started with Alexander the Great. Alexander, the Making of a God is the Netflix documentary. Outstanding. And what I noticed was that I liked it so much that I started taking notes. So I decided that my personal curriculum was going to be studying history, and I was going to document it with mind maps. Why? Because that's an easy way to retain stories. And I found that I was able to share with people. I was telling them, like, you got to watch this documentary. Why do I have to watch this documentary? Let me tell you why you got to watch this documentary. Not only can I tell them about why they should watch the documentary, I have notes that I can send them. I can send them my mind map full of information from each one of the episodes of this documentary. Alexander the Great was outstanding. So what I did was that I put in the middle whatever the topic is, right? And then I started paying attention to the big things, the big rocks that were going on in the documentary. So for example, it was said that he was the greatest military mind, that he was also a priest. I didn't know that. Did you know that about Alexander the Great? He was a priest. Why was he a priest? Because his daddy let somebody almost murder him. So Alexander exiled himself to Illyria, where he was a priest, and he was there with his friend, who was also his greatest love, named Hephaestion. I think that was his name. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, forgive me. That's not the point. But I was able to tell you all of that because I mind mapped it from who is he? What did they say he was? How did he end up in Illyria? He was a priest? What? He was there with his friend who was his greatest love? What do you mean? And then he voluntarily exiled himself. I'm like, what? But what was so good about it was I'm following the story. Now I'm invested in the story. And you find all these different things that happen as a result. And so other big blocks I put down was who his mother was. Her name was Olympias, his mother. And I'm like, it's interesting that they would dive into his mother and then you find out what his mama did and what his mama might not have done. Who his father was, who was Philip II. And then, what happened to him. I don't want to totally ruin it for you if you don't know about Alexander the Great and you want to actually go explore this. But by doing the mind maps for each episode, I have the big things that happened in the episode, and I'm able to actually look back on it and decide whether or not I want to deep dive into some of the other players in Alexander's life or even some of the different places that he went to go visit. He was also known as being a poet, an inventor. I'm like, he was a poet? Like, do they have some of his poetry? Can I read it? That's a deep dive. He was an inventor. He was a philosopher. What did he invent? I don't really know what he invented, but do I want to deep dive into that? He was also known as a tyrant. How was he a tyrant? Well, we go into that further into the other episode. So in episode 2, I put down he marches to Macedonia. And from there, he goes and conquers all of these different places. But by just doing all of this and then even putting down the dates, you were able to see how he was doing all of these things so quickly. What I loved about documenting this way is that it actually made looking at the documentary not only more fun for me, but I realized that it sparked in me why I enjoyed history when I was in school. It's the storytelling. I love the storytelling aspects of what was going on back in the day. Now, when I started looking at Sitting Bull, so Sitting Bull has, as a documentary on Netflix, there are 2 episodes that are 90 minutes apiece. It took me almost 3 hours to get through one episode. Why? Because I took notes. And the notes, y'all, episode 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this is 5. Like 5 spreads of notes. And it's just me sitting here documenting the things that happen. So I thought I knew a lot about Sitting Bull. Apparently I did not. And through studying this way, through going through the documentary, writing down the big things, who was he besides just a Lakota Indian? Who was he? He was considered one of the greatest warriors in North America. He was a grassroots leader, a thinker, a visionary. Did you know that Sitting Bull was not Sitting Bull's first name? Did you know that? His first name was actually Jumping Badger. You want to know how he got the name Sitting Bull? You got to go look at the documentary. I don't want to spoil it for you. But it was so fun to learn these things about Sitting Bull and Alexander the Great and the people in their lives and how these relationships spanned for years and these people became who they are. And then looking at Sitting Bull was really hard. It was hard because I saw how all he wanted to do was just live the Lakota life. I learned so much about the Lakota culture and the buffalo and how that was so important to them. And then to see what happened when what Lincoln did, President Lincoln did, because he saw Sitting Bull as a threat. And then not only him, there was also President Grant who saw him as a threat. I have another president written in here somewhere who saw him as a threat. It was like he went through cycles of presidents who continued to just do terrible things to try to stop the influence of this man. And then to see the evolution of what was happening in the 1860s to where we are now in 2026, and how so much of history continues to repeat itself. But had I not decided that my personal curriculum was going to be history, that was not my plan. I would not have gotten this excited about what is my next documentary going to be. What am I hoping to learn about myself through watching these documentaries? And the first thing that I'm noticing is I'm looking at the patterns of the types of documentaries I'm looking at. So for right now, I'm noticing that I'm really attracted to leaders or people who were considered to be great minds and had great strategic thought. And so how can I use what they did? And here are 2 men that literally in completely different realms of leadership, completely different centuries, yet considered some of the greatest strategic minds of all time. So what am I noticing about them? How did they entice people to want to follow them and do what it was that they wanted them to do? And then what were their different tactics for getting people to do that? Who knew? Who knew in my big age that I would find history this interesting, simply because I decided I was going to do a mind map to help me retain the information. Use my traveler's notebook instead of making it precious. I went on ahead and created these not very attractive mind maps. I actually love them. I love mind maps. They're my favorite way to connect ideas together. But by doing this, I'm having so much fun watching the shows and also absorbing the information differently. It's been great. So I want to know from you, do you have a personal curriculum? Have you done it for yourself? If you have or have not, what would you study? What have you studied? And what did you get out of it? I really want to know. Thank you as always for checking out my videos, for subscribing, liking, leaving comments. I love when we get into conversation in the comments. So make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you share with me. What do you want to study? What do you want to learn more about? And let's do this together. I'm Lucretia. Thank you for checking out this week's video.